teachers who matched with one of their students on Tinder. What's your story? My roommate unknowingly matched with a guy who had just graduated from the school where I taught. It was a kind of funny passing comment of, "Oh, I matched with a guy who graduated from X school." We both assumed that it wouldn't be one of my students because I taught sophomores for the most part and this kid was a graduated senior, so we figured it was a funny coincidence rather than weird. She invited him over to our place to hang out. He walked in and introduced himself before he and my roommate went to hang out in her room and watch a movie. I had to text my roommate that the kid had obviously lied about something because A, he was current senior, not a graduated one, and B, I'd had him as a student in my newspaper class. Turned out he lied about his age, said he was 19, and pretended that he didn't know me despite the fact he had class with me. Nice kid, but he never got invited around again. Oh damn. This just happened to a regular at my local. We are there having drinks, as we often do, and he starts telling me that he matched with his 8th grade English teacher, who was 24, when he was 13. Not a crazy age difference. So they chatted and laughed about the coincidence and how weird it was. But they ended up talking for hours about life, how they're both divorced, decided what the hell, and agreed to meet at our bar that night. She was there like an hour later. She seemed super fun and looked great for 46. They sat next to me and my wife and we all had fun talking, but then they moved to a booth to be alone. 90 minutes and good amount of shots later, they are kissing in the booth. About 10 minutes later, they are paying their tab and ordering a car to the nearest bedroom. It's been about 3 weeks and they are still hanging out. They really like each other. It's kinda creepy but sweet. He seems happier than usual. The issue with teacher/former student relationships, as covered in our code of conduct, is not really how long it's been since you were their teacher, although minimum of 2 years is recommended. It's more about how long has it been since there has been a unbalanced power dynamic, teacher over student, and has a significant enough period of time passed that the teacher doesn't have unreasonable emotional control over the student. For example, if the teacher taught you in their class for many years, or in senior and a strong emotional bond was created, it would be a significant amount of time before the power dynamic would wane. It would be different again if the student was at the same school, but you never taught them or interacted in a significant way. I think 20 years is a sufficient amount of time for any unbalanced power relationships to have dissipated. It's worse than being a teacher. A social worker. I used to work with teenage girls who had been trafficked and exploited. I had worked with this girl when she was 15. She had turned 22 or 23 and looked significantly different. I was just casually blasting through pictures and really hadn't spent much time investigating. I was having a quiet Friday night in drinking beer and playing a game and suddenly my phone blows up and the girls is responding with how excited she was we matched, how into me she was, and how she wanted me to fuck her brains out. We talked about some weird shit, me doing weird shit, her doing weird shit to me, like intense stuff. Then she asked, "Can I call you Mr. Donkey_brains while you do insert weird shit?" I kind of paused. I was like WTF I hadn't shared my last name. So, I asked her how she knew it. She jokes about being offended I didn't remember her and it all suddenly kicked my drunk brain stick in, and I felt physically sick. She had been through some stuff, and I couldn't help but think about that trauma, and how it likely related to her eagerness to do the weird shit I enjoy doing in bed, and how maybe that had also been true for past FWB and girlfriends and I just hadn't realized it at the time. She pushed the issue a little bit more, but I told her I hadn't put 2 and 2 together and just thought she was an attractive woman, but it would be 100% inappropriate for me to have that relationship. I then kind of had like a weird sexual crisis, where I was bothered by my own kinks, and avoided them for the next 2 years. On a professional level what you did was the right thing to do, but if you had the same kinks, don't you feel it's more likely an unrelated personal preference, and less an issue of her having been trafficked and abused? I'm a foster parent and we get a lot of training on this subject, and there's always this huge emphasis on how uncommon, or even just strong sexual desires are giant red flags for abuse. It's like they're not allowed to ever be horny, or have weird kinks ever again. They can't share that part of their past with anyone, especially anyone they're attracted to, without any sexual relationship between them being tainted by the concept that the only reason they're into this stuff is because they had a touchy uncle. Not Tinder, but teacher related. I had a friend who was up for anything. Flirted with everyone, hooked up with anyone. Give him a dare, and he'd do it before you finished talking. Full of crazy ideas and no limits. Any girl could walk up to him and kiss him out if the blue, and he'd be on board immediately. Lots of fun, and we all assumed there would be nothing he'd say no to. Until one night we all walked into a bar in our early 20s and a girl danced up to him for some close quarters work. Without a pause he immediately turned around, handed his full drink to a stranger, said we're leaving, and walked out without turning around to see if we were behind him. After about half a block of fast walking he told us she had been a student of his last year and still attended his school. He teaches grade 10 math. Even though drinking age is only 19 here, she obviously got in with fake ID. One of the group made a joke about him getting so freaked out BC he must have been in trouble for hooking up with a student before, and the lecture he rounded on him about taking advantage of kids sexually when you're in a position of authority made it clear that he wasn't scared of repercussions. It was his limit, the one thing he wouldn't do, ever. My youngest brother, 24, matched up with a seemingly nice girl on Tinder. They started dating afterwards. She was a probation officer for the county and had been doing it for a few years. My brother was and is currently on probation for arson. They were together for about 6 months when they came to dinner at my place, during which I asked her about her job. She told me she is a probation officer. I then asked her if them being together is a problem since he is on probation. She froze for a good minute, then said she didn't know that he was on probation. The rest of dinner was awkward. Couple weeks later when talking to my brother he told me that she decided to stay with him, even though it was against the rules for her job. I guess she was hoping they would never find out, but they did less than a week later. She got fired, and will probably never work in that field again. My brother broke up with her the next month. He had the nerve to tell me that he broke up with her because she was being lazy, had no money, and was depressed a lot. I told him he was a giant fucking scumbag. I don't think he even understood why she was depressed. He did not feel bad at all and didn't think he was to blame, even a little bit. He is a big piece of shit. This story comes from pre-Tinder days, but I'm the product of a student and her second year maths lecturer. Student and lecturer ended up getting married, starting a family, and growing old together. But there was some serious fallout. Lecturer's supervisor decided student was a harlot and tried to manipulate the entire maths department into flunking her. When nobody would comply, he kept trying until the day she had to call in sick for her final honors exam. She verbally told supervisor she was in hospital and unable to attend. Supervisor said it was fine and she could make it up when she was well. The next week she rocked up, ready to take the exam, only to be told she'd flunked and there was no second chance to sit the exam. He denied all knowledge of the conversation. Student still managed second class honors, despite all this. So kinda not really what you're asking for, but never had the chance to tell this story. So, when I was 12 years old, my English teacher had a medical emergency and was out for 4 months. We had a long-term sub. His name, no joke, was Mr. Love. And he was gorgeous. Maybe 25, built, creamy dark skin, a voice like an angel, and he cared about every single student he had. He was the epitome of every middle school girl's hormonal fantasy. 10 years later I'm on the bus going to work. I'm in a committed relationship and pregnant, but not showing yet. Who gets on the bus? Mr. Love. The only empty seat is next to me, so he takes it. We ride in silence for a moment, but before I can figure out how to break the ice he turns to me and starts working his, still apparent, charm. I've never seen you here before. Do you go this way often? You're a very beautiful woman to be traveling on your own. You know, I'd love to take you out for coffee sometime. At that point, I couldn't stop myself. I said, did you sub for an English class 10 years ago? Because if your name is Mr. Love, I was one of your students. I thought you were so attractive back then. He balked at that and got off the bus at the next stop. Not me, but one of the teachers at the high school I work at matched with one of his students on Grindr. The kid was 16. Teacher came and told us, the school counselors, and we had to sit the kid down and have a conversation about the dangers of lying about his age to have random hookups with older men. He said he had been doing it a while and appreciated that we were concerned about him. He said he did not plan on stopping, but he was obviously not trying to hook up with anyone from the school. The teacher felt so awkward having the kid in his class the rest of the year. I think he maybe wanted to try and mentor the kid a bit to help him stay safe in the cruising scene, but that could get ugly really fast if the parents found out. He graduated and went to uni, so hopefully he is doing okay still.